I had been with Ethan for 3 years. Later, he decided to get engaged and offered me $50 million to walk away. Back then, I was too proud, valuing my dignity above everything else. I didn't take the money. 2 years later, my life was in shambles. Just as I hit rock bottom, a wealthy heir started pursuing me. I agreed to date him. On the day we got together, he took me shopping. I didn't hold back and picked out items worth 7 figures. But when it was time to pay, his card got declined. The man looked mortified and quickly brought up his cousin, who was supposedly a big shot in the city. "My cousin is nearby. I'll have him come over." I said, "All right." The next moment, when the man appeared in front of me, I was utterly stunned. When it came time to pay, Lucas didn't even flinch at the mountain of luxury items in front of him. In that moment, I knew I had made the right choice in dating him. The way we met was ridiculously cliché. I was riding my electric scooter after work when I accidentally scratched his luxury car. He was on a call at the time, his tone casual and unserious. "I'm breaking up with you. Can't you understand that, babe? Things get boring if you take them too seriously." He sounded every bit the playboy he appeared to be. Even after his car was scratched, he didn't get angry. He simply kept coaxing the girl on the other end of the line while giving me a meaningful glance. Then he waved his hand, signaling me to leave. I hesitated for a moment but left. 2 years ago, I would have insisted on compensating him even if it was an amount I couldn't afford. But now, I wouldn't. 2 years was long enough to teach me that dignity was the most useless thing. I had nothing but a pretty face. So later, when he suddenly showed up outside my office building, I wasn't even surprised. A long time ago, I learned from another man that there are people in this world who are born different. They're untouchable, extravagant, and getting what they want is as simple as snapping their fingers. They firmly believe that money can solve everything. The sales associate soon announced the total. I quickly did the math in my head. Once I broke up with Lucas, this amount would be enough for me to settle down here, buy a modest 2-bedroom apartment, and maybe even a decent car. How wonderful! Just as I thought that, the sales associate spoke again, her tone a little cautious. "Sir, the card had been declined." Lucas awkwardly cleared his throat, took the card back, and raised an eyebrow. "Hang on a sec." He picked up his phone and made a call, sounding very practiced at this sort of thing. After hanging up, he turned to me and said, "My cousin's nearby shopping for his fiancée. He'll be here soon." I smiled at him, playing along. All right. After meeting Lucas, I'd often heard others mention his cousin. Most of the time, they spoke of him with a mix of awe and avoidance. That guy is something else. I'm telling you, it's fine to date Lucas, but don't ever mess with his cousin. I heard he's got a fiancée, and they're very private about it. She's some kind of heiress, and the two of them are quite the power couple. That was someone else's story, and I had no feelings about it. But since I was about to meet him, I spent some time rehearsing in my head how I should smile, what I should say. Yet when I finally saw him, all my preparation went out the window. I froze on the spot, my body stiff. Lucas stood beside me and held my hand. "Olivia, say hi to my cousin." "Cousin," I heard myself say, my voice trembling slightly. The man was calm, nodding faintly. It was as if he didn't know me at all. Then he walked past me. We were so close that I could smell the faint, woody scent of his cologne. When we were together, he never wore this scent, because I didn't like it. But now, it seemed nothing in this world was permanent. For example, I used to be his girlfriend. Now, I was his cousin's. Ethan swiped his card and glanced at the pile of items. He frowned slightly, but said nothing. Lucas complained to him. Someone must have been bad-mouthing me to my dad again. Bro, I'll transfer the money to you in a couple of days, okay? While we had been waiting earlier, Lucas had mentioned a thing or two about Ethan. He said his cousin was a man of principle and had always been strict with their generation of siblings. There are no free lunches in the world. He might give you resources or projects, but only if you could prove your worth. My cousin is generous with money, but it's got to be for the right reasons. Dating? Nope, that's on your own tab. But this time, Ethan just gave him an unreadable look. There's no need. Huh. Lucas blurted out, looking both surprised and flattered. So, does that mean I don't have to pay you back in the future either? Ethan smiled faintly, but the expression was ice cold. Just this once, okay? Lucas rubbed his nose, not thinking much of it. I knew it, you're the best to me. My girlfriend will thank you too. Girlfriend, Ethan repeated, finally shifting his gaze toward Olivia. She pressed her lips together, meeting his eyes. Thanks, she said quietly. Ethan didn't respond to her. Instead, he exchanged a few more words with Lucas before finally leaving. Before he walked off, he handed Lucas a sleek black card. Here, take it. Get whatever you want. Lucas eagerly accepted it, his face lighting up with gratitude as he looked at Ethan. Bro, you're practically my real brother. The three of them wandered around the mall a bit longer, leaving only when the sky darkened. Lucas arranged for all the shopping bags to be delivered to Olivia's place. When they reached a quieter spot, Lucas glanced at her face, his expression softening as he gently rubbed her wrist. Then, leaning closer, he leaned in for a kiss. Olivia didn't resist. He pressed his lips to hers, skillfully deepening the kiss without hesitation. Her hands clenched into fists, staying still as her heart raced. But just as the moment heated up, his phone buzzed. Ugh, he muttered, reluctantly pulling away. He glanced at the caller ID, and his irritation quickly vanished. My brother's calling, it sounds urgent. Wait here, I'll have someone take you home. I'll just grab a cab, Olivia replied simply. He paused, considering. All right, just message me when you're home. After Lucas left, Olivia stepped onto the curb to hail a taxi. Suddenly, a luxury car glided up beside her. The window rolled down, revealing Ethan's sharply defined profile. He looked at her, his gaze lingering on her lips for a long moment before speaking. His voice was low and cool. Two simple words made her heart skip a beat. Get in. The moonlight cast a faint glow as Olivia stood on the steps, locking eyes with Ethan. He didn't rush her, instead lifting his eyelids lazily before speaking, his voice unhurried. Olivia. Her head lowered slightly. Ethan, what do you want? The sight of him had caught her off guard earlier. She hadn't expected her luck to run this bad. Her first boyfriend, after breaking up with Ethan, turned out to be his cousin. She was actually pretty happy with Lucas, and had no plans of breaking up with him anytime soon. Her breakup with Ethan had been anything but graceful, and now she was terrified he might bring up their messy past. Lucas was the type who would drop her in a heartbeat if he found out. Dating his cousin's ex-girlfriend, that'd be a deal-breaker, especially when he idolized Ethan, practically looking up to him like a living legend. Ethan stared at her, his intense gaze unwavering. After a moment, he let out a low chuckle, the sound laced with confusion and a sharp edge of mockery. Don't tell me, you actually think I still have feelings for you? Olivia hadn't expected him to be so blunt. Her face heated up with embarrassment, because, honestly, that's exactly what she'd been thinking. From the moment they bumped into each other until now, at least 2 hours had passed. Ethan had done nothing but wait for them to come down. Then he sent Lucas away and told her to get in his car. Night fell softly around them, the setting ripe with unspoken tension. Just the two of them alone. They had shared so much once: intimacy, laughter, memories that lingered. And when they broke up, he had still cared for her deeply, as much as she remembered. The memory came rushing back. That night, they sat across from each other at dinner. He was peeling shrimp for her, meticulously removing every last piece of shell. He knew how much she loved them. He didn't stop until the plate was almost overflowing. She teased him between bites. "My roommate told me there's this freshman girl asking everywhere about you. Says she wants to chase after you." Ethan had graduated 2 years ahead of her, a senior when they first met. Not long after finishing school, he'd started his own company, quickly making a name for himself. He was so successful that the university invited him back to give a motivational talk. Olivia, as a member of the student council, had been assigned to liaise with him. He was already a legend then, widely known as a self-made prodigy in the business world. But he kept a low profile. For the longest time, no one knew that his family name, Jiang, linked him to the elite families of Baikeng's prestigious Funning Road. In that part of town, every household had influence, and every name carried weight. The first time Olivia saw him, she'd been so nervous her hands shook. He noticed and smirked casually. "Do I look that scary?" he teased. "No, not at all," she stammered. Ethan had an undeniable presence. His looks didn't hurt, but it was something deeper, a quiet confidence that drew people in. Back then, half the girls on campus were obsessed with him. They crossed paths a few more times after that, their interactions charged with subtle flirtations. His texts, which started out short and curt, gradually grew longer and more thoughtful. Her roommate had noticed, nudging her with encouragement. "You've got a real shot with him." Young and impulsive, Olivia couldn't resist taking the plunge. One evening, under the glow of a street lamp, she confessed her feelings. Then, gathering all her courage, she leaned in and kissed his cheek. The moon had been especially bright that night. Ethan looked down at her for a long moment, then sighed softly as if she'd left him no choice. "You sure about this?" he asked. "Yeah," she replied, her voice brimming with determination. From that day on, we were officially a couple, but not many people knew about it. On campus, only a few of my roommates were in on the secret. Now, sitting in this lavishly decorated restaurant, Ethan went silent for what felt like an eternity after I told him someone else wanted to date him. The smile on my face froze as I struggled to read his expression. "What? Are you actually considering dating my junior?" He wiped his hands, then looked up and cut me off with a serious tone. "No, I want to marry you." For clatter, the fork in my hand slipped and hit the table with a sharp noise. Ethan, always so composed and restrained, had never been one for romantic words. In the 3 years we had been together, this was probably the closest he had ever come to saying something that resembled a love confession. His dark eyes locked onto mine, unblinking. I smiled. Okay. But that was it, nothing more. I was too naive back then to notice the deeper meaning hidden in his gaze, because just a few days later, I saw it with my own eyes, him holding another girl as they walked out of a private room at a fancy club. The girl was wearing a white dress, embellished with tiny crystals that sparkled under the light. It was definitely expensive. Her face was buried in his chest, her arms wrapped around his neck, and they looked close. A classmate standing next to me sighed enviously. "I think that's Ethan's fiancée." I overheard people in their private room joking about when they're getting married. Wow, Ethan's really something, huh? I even saw the owner of this place call him young master Ethan earlier. In North City, there weren't many people who earned the respect of this restaurant's owner. I was stunned. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Wasn't he my boyfriend? The next moment, they walked toward a car. I was about to step forward and confront him when I saw the girl in his arms lift her face and kiss him on the lips. Ethan froze for a moment before pushing her away. But it didn't make me feel any better. After they left, I pulled out my phone and called him. I saw everything. He paused, then sighed softly on the other end. "Give me 2 years, okay? Our families are close, and I can't refuse this engagement right now." That was when I realized that his so-called startup was just a rich kid's hobby. Even if it failed, he could still live a life of luxury. His background was so privileged, so untouchable, that it made us incompatible. People in his world would never marry someone like me. Yet, he spoke with such conviction at the time. 2 years. We'll get married for sure. But for now, I can't give you a title. Putting it nicely, I would remain unnamed. Putting it bluntly, wasn't I just the other woman? I was young and proud back then. How could I tolerate such humiliation? "Ethan, what do you take me for?" I held back my tears and said with finality, "Let's break up." He tried to reach out to me many times after that, but I never saw him again. Even my roommates tried to convince me. "I can tell he really loves you and wants to marry you. Just endure it for 2 years. It's not that big of a deal. With someone from his background, these things can be complicated." I stayed silent. Everyone said he loved me. But did that mean he could treat me however he wanted? Did that give him the right to look down on me, to expect me to stay by his side without a name, to push me into such a degrading situation? He grew up having everything handed to him. So naturally, he assumed I would follow him without complaint. He was certain I couldn't live without him, that I would wait for him. But he didn't understand what it meant to me. It meant that while another girl hugged him, kissed him, and maybe even slept with him, I wouldn't be able to say a word. I wouldn't even have the right to be jealous, because I would be the one hidden in the shadows. To him and his circle, 2 years was nothing. They couldn't understand why I was making such a big deal out of it. The last time we met was at the restaurant where I worked part-time. He sat alone, ordering the most expensive items on the menu. When I brought his food to the table, he silently watched me the entire time. It wasn't until I turned to leave that he suddenly reached out, grabbing my wrist tightly. His voice was strained. "If you're willing, you'll never have to do this kind of work again." He had the money to ensure I'd never have to lift a finger for the rest of my life. If it were now, I might have said yes. But back then, I simply looked at him coldly and slapped him across the face. "I don't want it." He stood there, his eyes slowly turning red. He didn't say anything for a long time. A crowd had gathered around us, watching the drama unfold. But he didn't care. He just spoke softly. "You'll see. One day, I'll marry you." It was the kind of reckless declaration you'd expect from someone young and foolish. But that night, his friend came to find me. His name was Blake. I'd met him a few times before, even had meals with him. After Ethan and I broke up, Blake tried to talk me into getting back together with him a few times. But this time, he didn't try to persuade me. Instead, he handed me a check. "Here, for you. He's getting engaged. She's the daughter of the Liu family, but she's not as beautiful as you." He chuckled as he looked me up and down. "Not as stubborn, either. To be honest, I've never seen Ethan care about any girl as much as he cares about you, you know." He sighed, cutting himself off. "Forget it. If Ethan finds out I said this, he'll definitely flip out on me." I calmly unfolded the check in my hands, counting the digits over and over until I fully registered the number. 50 million. I'd never seen so much money in my life. "You can take this money, do whatever you want with it. Just make sure you live well. Ethan said he'll come find you." Right in front of him, I tore the check to pieces. Holding my breath, I finally spoke. "Then tell him this, I don't want his money, and tell him to stop being such a bastard." But what I didn't know was that he was on the phone with Ethan at that very moment. Every word I said was transmitted, loud and clear, straight to Ethan's ears. I had crushed his pride under my heel completely and thoroughly. When I got into the car afterward, I received a text from him. "Olivia, you better not regret this." For some reason, seeing those words didn't make me angry. Instead, I found myself imagining the expression on his face as he typed them. It was probably cold, with a hint of resignation. But what was he resigned about? Even someone like him, Ethan, the golden boy, basking in the light of everyone's admiration, couldn't have everything go his way. There were bound to be things he couldn't hold on to, no matter how hard he tried. I pressed my lips together and typed a response. Okay, asterisk, but I had to admit something. Time changes everything. 2 years later, Ethan really didn't care about me anymore. After saying those words, he spoke again, his tone measured, almost paternal. "Get in the car. If you're dating Lucas now, then I'm here to talk to you about him." I hesitated for a moment, then nodded. If it was about Lucas, I had to listen. After all, he had just bought me so many things. But for some reason, Ethan's expression darkened the moment I agreed. What a strange man. He was the one who told me to get in the car, yet when I said yes, he looked unhappy. As I walked toward the back door, reaching out to open it, he stopped me. "Sit in the front." My hand froze midair. That faint, lingering thought I tried to push away came rushing back. Maybe he hadn't forgotten me after all. Maybe bringing up Lucas was just an excuse. But the moment I saw what was in the back seat, I knew I'd been deluding myself. The back seat was filled to the brim with shopping bags, designer clothes, fine jewelry, all from the current season's collections. I could tell at a glance that these items were far more extravagant than the ones Lucas had just bought me. I felt awkward, my face burning as if someone had slapped me. Ethan noticed my reaction and spoke in a calm, detached voice. "Grace likes these things. They're all for her. Can you take a look and tell me if you think she'll like them?" That's when I remembered what Lucas had mentioned earlier. Ethan was in this area to shop for his fiancée. I looked at the items carefully. They were exquisite. He had good taste, just as he always had. The more I looked, the more my eyes stung. Maybe it was the diamonds. They were too dazzling. I shut the door and got into the passenger seat. He gripped the steering wheel and asked, "Where to?" After a brief pause, I told him the name of my apartment complex. He nodded silently and began to drive. Neither of us spoke. It wasn't until much later that he broke the silence. "Where have you been these past 2 years? How have you been?" I turned my head, ready to answer, but my eyes caught the ring on his finger first. His tone was casual, like he was catching up with an old friend he hadn't seen in a long time. I smiled faintly. "Good, I've been doing well." I wasn't, not even close. Not long after I left him, my father fell into a gambling addiction. He racked up an enormous amount of debt. Unable to bear it, he jumped off a building. Debt collectors came to my house every day. I had no choice but to keep moving, running from place to place. My mother, who had divorced my father not long before, remarried quickly and never once looked back to help me. I borrowed money from every relative I could think of, until there was no one left to ask. In those days, no one was willing to help me. I'd thought about going back to Ethan. The debt collectors were banging on my door, and I was hiding inside, trembling as I dialed the number I knew by heart. The phone rang for a long time before he finally picked up. His voice was hoarse. In the background, I heard a woman's voice. "Ethan, where's my camisole? Did you throw it on the floor again?" It wasn't hard to guess what they were doing. I panicked and hung up, then buried my face in my hands and cried. I was proud. I was stubborn. But I really liked him. Even in the second before I called, I was still thinking, if I went back to him now, it wouldn't be too late, right? But he didn't give me the chance. Maybe, even if I'd agreed to stay by his side without asking for a title or commitment, it wouldn't have mattered. It was only a matter of time before this happened. He would leave me and fall in love with his fiancée, the legendary Grace, elegant, poised, and the cherished daughter of the prominent Liu family. Ethan listened quietly. After a moment, he replied with a simple Then his phone rang. It was Grace. Ethan's demeanor softened immediately. I stood right there, listening to him chat with his fiancée. He was patient, answering everything she said with care. I stopped looking at him. When he finally hung up, he turned to me and said, "Lucas has a family engagement lined up. That girl has a temper. You should end things with him sooner rather than later. Otherwise, if something happens down the road, it'll only cause more trouble." He paused for a moment, as if carefully weighing his next words. "As Lucas's cousin, I won't take your side." I stayed silent for a long time before responding, "Okay." There was a sense of fairness in his tone, but it was cold and distant. Yet, I couldn't help but recall how he never used to speak to me like this when we were together. At that moment, I finally understood. He was speaking to me as the head of the Jiang Corporation, not as the man I used to know. To him, I was just another woman he needed to handle on behalf of his cousin. Ethan tapped his fingers lightly on the steering wheel, frowning as his gaze lingered on me. "But I know your personality well enough. He already has a fiancée. No matter how much you like him, you'll cut ties with him, won't you?" I smiled faintly and said nothing. He nodded to himself, as if convinced he was right, and didn't press further. He thought I would listen to him, but what he didn't know was that I wasn't the same person I used to be. Over the past 2 years, I had endured more hardships than he could imagine, all to pay off my debts. Lucas's presence in my life was, at the very least, a temporary reprieve from all that. When I got home, the delivery had already arrived. I glanced at the packages but didn't open them. After all, I'd have to sell everything off soon enough. It was a shame, really. Reselling them would mean losing a lot of their value. I put everything away, took a shower, and tidied myself up. By the time I picked up my phone again, several hours had passed. Lucas had sent me a string of messages. "Did you get home yet?" My brother is unbelievable. He dragged me all the way over just to deliver some documents. I didn't even get to see him. "Where are you?" "Olivia." I suddenly remembered I'd promised to text him when I got home. Feeling guilty, I quickly called him. Lucas answered almost immediately. After I explained, he chuckled lightly. "As long as you're okay. I was about to head over to check on you." He sounded earnest, but I could hear the faint background noise of people talking and playing cards. I hesitated before saying, "No need. You must be tired after today. Get some rest." With someone like Lucas, you only needed to give him the slightest out. My role was to leave him an easy exit. As expected, he didn't insist. "All right, I'll pick you up tomorrow. Let's go out." I agreed. Just then, I heard a voice on his end, loud and unfiltered. "What, still sweet-talking your little girlfriend? You chased her so hard, and now that you've finally got her, you're still willing to ditch us at night to cozy up with her." Lucas cursed under his breath and quickly covered the receiver. Then he returned to the call, his voice low and apologetic. "Don't listen to him." I could hear the sound of a door closing as he stepped out of the room. He coaxed me with a few more words, his tone warm and familiar. It reminded me of when I first met him. Back then, Lucas had gone to great lengths to win me over. A rich kid like him, willing to slum it with me, eating street food, wandering through bargain clothing stores. Yes, bargain. I remember him trailing behind me, frowning as he said, How about I have some clothes sent to your place instead? I refused. He started to say something but stopped himself, eventually letting it go. But after we got together, the first thing he did was take me shopping at a high-end mall. It was obvious he had been holding back for a while. Thinking of that, I decided the next day to pull out a couple of outfits from the neatly wrapped packages he had sent me. Might as well make him happy. When Lucas came to pick me up, his eyes lit up the moment he saw me. My girlfriend is stunning. He never hesitated to compliment me. He opened the car door for me. And just as I was about to get in, he wrapped an arm around my waist, pulling me closer. With a mischievous grin, he leaned in, his face inches from mine. I caught on quickly, clutching his sleeve as I stood on tiptoes, ready to kiss him. But before I could, a voice cut through the moment. "Are you getting in or not?" I froze mid-motion. Lucas, however, wasn't the least bit embarrassed. "Come on, Ethan. When you're all lovey-dovey with Grace, I never interrupt you." It was clear the brothers had a close bond. Looking past Lucas, I caught sight of the man sitting in the backseat. Ethan was dressed simply in a shirt, his legs crossed casually. His expression was calm, even indifferent, but upon hearing Lucas's comment, he glanced at me briefly, his eyes narrowing slightly and almost imperceptibly. "Is that so?" he said, his tone unreadable. I recalled his warning from last night and felt a pang of anxiety. I couldn't bring myself to meet his gaze, so I quickly looked away. The entire ride, I sat in the front passenger seat while Ethan sat directly behind me. I could feel his eyes on me the whole time, a silent weight pressing against my back. When we arrived, the air outside was cold. Lucas took off his jacket and draped it over my shoulders. "A friend of mine is celebrating their birthday today. I thought I'd bring you along to liven things up." I nodded and moved closer to him, slipping my arm through his. Lucas seemed pleased by the gesture. As Ethan brushed past us, his eyes lingered briefly on my hand resting on Lucas's arm, before his expression returned to a blank, detached mask. Without a word, he walked ahead into the venue. Lucas leaned down to whisper in my ear, his tone conspiratorial. "You know, my brother's been acting kind of strange. Last night, he said in the group chat that he wasn't coming, but as soon as I mentioned I was picking you up today, he suddenly asked to tag along." I froze. I understood immediately. Ethan must have found out that I hadn't cut things off with Lucas yet. He was here to deliver his warning in person. Lucas continued, as if suddenly remembering something. He used to have a pretty good temper, but ever since 2 years ago, he's been different. In all these years, the only woman I've ever seen him treat decently is Grace. 2 years ago, that timing, it was too significant. Feeling a wave of discomfort, I casually asked, "Have they not gotten married yet?" It had already been 2 years since their engagement. Lucas didn't seem to find my question odd. I wouldn't know about that. Inside the private room, the space was lively and bustling with people. Not wanting to draw much attention, I found a quiet corner and sat down. Lucas stayed with me for a bit before being pulled away to join a card game. A while later, a man approached me with a glass of wine in hand. "Care for a drink, sweetheart?" I recognized his voice. It was the same one who had teased Lucas over the phone yesterday. I wasn't a lightweight when it came to drinking. But last year, out of sheer desperation, I had come to places like this before. One particular client, with an air of arrogance, had stacked wads of cash in front of me, saying, "Finish all the drinks on the table, and it's all yours." I downed drink after drink, his smug expression gradually shifting into one of disbelief. He hadn't expected me to go that hard. Predictably, I ended up earning the money and a trip to the hospital. Since then, I hadn't touched alcohol. "No, I'm sorry, I can't drink," I declined politely. The man chuckled. It's just one glass. Come on, it won't hurt. I pressed my lips together. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Lucas glance up from his game and casually call out, "Don't worry, Olivia, just have a little. I'm right here." Yeah, don't be such a buzzkill. Lucas's exes used to be way more fun than this. Instinctively, my gaze shifted to the corner where Ethan was sitting. Our eyes met. He was watching me. Someone noticed the exchange and, in an attempt to curry favor with Ethan, asked with a grin, "What do you think, Ethan?" Ethan swirled the wine in his glass lazily, his expression cold and detached. With a faint smirk, he uttered a single word, "Sure." A complicated mix of emotions churned in my chest. The man who used to shield me from everything now had someone else in his heart. His indifference toward me, it was only natural. I took a deep breath and reached for the glass of wine. Cheers erupted around me as I held the glass in hand. The man who had offered me the drink egged me on, his voice dripping with mockery. "Come on, bottoms up. Lucas's last girlfriend, remember her? The gorgeous model. She downed several bottles last time. If I truly considered Lucas my boyfriend, I might have thrown the drink in his friend's face for treating me like this." But Lucas was nothing more than a lifeline I had grabbed onto in my darkest hour, a piece of driftwood keeping me afloat. In that moment, I recalled hearing someone say that one of Lucas's girlfriends had been dumped for being too reserved during a night out. He found women like that boring. I lifted the glass to my lips, ready to take a sip, when a hand suddenly snatched the glass from me. Before I could react, the wine was flung straight into the face of the man who had handed it to me. Then, with a swift kick, Ethan knocked over Lucas's chair. Lucas stumbled, nearly falling. "What the hell, Ethan?" Ethan's cold smile didn't reach his eyes. "Cards that interesting? You can't even keep an eye on your girlfriend." Lucas froze, then hurriedly scolded his friend. "Cut it out, guys. Don't push drinks on my girlfriend. She's not used to this kind of thing." Ethan stood off to the side, silent. For the rest of the evening, he didn't spare me another glance. By the time the party ended, Lucas was drunk. His driver was already waiting outside and helped him into the car. I was about to climb in after him when I realized my phone was missing. I borrowed the driver's phone to call my own. It was an old phone, one I had used for years. I didn't want to lose it. After a few rings, someone picked up. Relieved, I exhaled and asked, "Hello, did you find my phone? Where are you?" It's me." The voice on the other end was low and commanding. Then he added, "Olivia, I'm waiting for you in the room next door." I held my phone tightly in my hand. Lucas had sobered up a little and glanced over at me. "What's wrong? Aren't you getting in the car?" Through the receiver, I heard Ethan let out a faint scoff on the other end of the line. He said, "Ignore him." After a moment of hesitation, I handed my phone back to the driver. I made up a random excuse to Lucas and retraced my steps. I had decided it was time to be honest with Ethan. I was going to leave Lucas sooner or later. There was absolutely no need for him to keep warning me, time and again, about his cousin. After all, if anyone truly understood Lucas's temperament, it had to be Ethan. His concern seemed excessive. When I entered the private room, I pushed the door open, only to be greeted by darkness. I reached out to turn on the light. Just as my hand touched the switch, someone grabbed my wrist. Their grip was startlingly strong. In the next instant, the familiar scent of woody cologne hit me. It was Ethan. After a brief pause, I asked, "Where's my phone?" Ethan didn't answer. Instead, he asked me, "Do you really like him that much?" I froze, unsure of what he meant, but Ethan seemed to have already figured something out, as though my answer didn't matter to him anymore. The moonlight streaming in through the window illuminated his expressionless face. Suddenly, without warning, he gripped the back of my head, leaned in, and kissed me fiercely. I struggled, my voice trembling with anger. "Ethan," he responded in a low voice. Furious, I shoved him away and turned on the light. He squinted slightly under the sudden brightness. A faint trace of my lipstick smudged his lips, giving the moment an unintentional intimacy. His voice was hoarse as he glanced at the blazer I was wearing. "Didn't I tell you? You didn't listen, did you? He's planning to marry someone else. Even if you're madly in love with him, there's no future for the two of you." I was still fuming from what he'd just done, and I had completely forgotten the reason I'd come here in the first place. "Yes, I like him. I don't care if he has a fiancé. Are you happy now? And you, Ethan, you're so in love with your fiancé, aren't you? You must be getting married soon. Congratulations in advance." As I spoke, I caught sight of Ethan's phone resting on the table. I stepped closer to him. "Give it back. Lucas is still waiting for me outside." Ethan's expression was unreadable, shadowed with something I couldn't quite place. He looked at me for a long moment before finally placing the phone in my hand. Then, without another word, he walked past me and left the room. The door slammed shut with a loud bang. Lucas wasn't waiting outside for me. I had told them to leave without me earlier. I hailed a cab to get home, but even after lying in bed, I couldn't fall asleep for a long time. I found myself increasingly unable to understand Ethan. He was so devoted to his fiancée, yet he had done something so outrageous tonight. It was madness. Then again, I reasoned, perhaps he'd had too much to drink, or maybe he was simply furious at my refusal to leave Lucas. One thing was certain. It wasn't because he still had feelings for me. After that night, Lucas became even more attentive to me. Neither of us brought up what had happened. Before long, he invited me to a resort. His friend was there too. They were chatting on the terrace when their conversation suddenly escalated into a fight. I rushed over just in time to hear Lucas's voice. "She's my girlfriend. Say one more word and you'll regret it." The other man winced, holding his side as he surrendered. "Whoa, calm down. You've never gotten this angry about it before." I helped Lucas to his room and tended to the wound on his forehead. As I finished applying a bandage, he looked at me and spoke unexpectedly. "They can get pretty out of hand sometimes." I wasn't thinking straight that day either, siding with them. "You're not mad at me, are you?" I shook my head instinctively. "Of course not. I remember all the good things you've done for me. They're your friends, I don't mind. Besides," I paused, my voice softening, "I like you too much to care." The words came so naturally that I didn't think twice about them. But when I looked up, I saw Lucas staring at me intently. After a moment, he smiled faintly. "Come closer." I leaned in, expecting him to kiss me, but instead, he reached out and gently tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear. "Your hair's a mess," he said quietly. Lucas had always been somewhat playful and cavalier, but after that day, his demeanor toward me changed. He became more respectful, more restrained. Many nights, he would drop me off downstairs, only to ruffle my hair and say, "Go on in." Then he'd sit in his car, waiting until my apartment lights turned on before driving away. He rarely took me to those loud gatherings anymore. Lucas loved being around people, but he had started indulging me, joining me in the quieter activities I enjoyed. "Don't you get bored?" I asked him once. He just smiled, his eyes fixed on me. "I used to." Over time, Lucas spent a lot of money on me. I kept waiting for him to grow tired of me, to break up with me. But as the days passed, I began to realize that things weren't going the way I had anticipated. The more considerate he became, the more uneasy I felt. That uneasiness reached its peak the next time I saw Ethan. It happened when Lucas took me out for dinner. Halfway through dinner, he glanced at his phone, his expression suddenly turning a bit anxious as he recorded a voice message for someone. I almost forgot what today is. Where's the venue? What day? He didn't say, but I knew. July 11th, Ethan's birthday. Every year, Lucas, his most devoted fanboy, would take the lead in booking a venue and sending out invitations. This year, however, he seemed to have been so preoccupied with dating me that he forgot. Clearly, I wasn't the only one who thought so. I overheard a voice message from one of Lucas's friends. "We know you've been busy dating lately, huh? What's the deal? Getting serious. Ethan's right next to me, and he says to bring your girlfriend along." Lucas listened to the message, his face lighting up with smug satisfaction as he typed furiously on his phone. He didn't show me what he was typing, but my mind was replaying the voice message I just heard. Ethan wanted him to bring me along? The last time I saw Ethan, it hadn't ended well, if I could even call it an ending. And now he wanted to see me again. I sighed. Fine. If I have to face it, then so be it. I can't avoid it forever. Dating Lucas meant I'd inevitably have to see Ethan again at some point. After dinner, Lucas dragged me off to get my hair styled, picked out an outfit for me, and then we were off. It wasn't until we pulled up at the venue that I realized it was Ethan's villa. I followed Lucas around for a while before excusing myself to the restroom. When I came out, I ran into someone entirely unexpected. It was Blake. He was leaning against the wall, waiting for someone. When he saw me, he nearly tripped over his own feet, completely caught off guard. Even his words stumbled. "Olivia, Olivia." I froze for a moment, then nodded slightly. Blake gave me a once-over, clicked his tongue, and then said, "He moves fast, huh? Already got you back. And he didn't even tell me about it." He misunderstood. He thought I was here because of Ethan. I opened my mouth, about to explain, when Lucas walked over and stood by my side. "Blake, weren't you overseas? I can't believe you flew back for this." Then, turning to me, he introduced him. "This is my brother's best friend. I've always called him Big Bro, so you can just call him that too." I pressed my lips together and muttered, "Big Bro." Blake looked like he'd just seen a ghost. After all, he used to call me sister-in-law. "Big Bro, this is my girlfriend, Olivia," Lucas added with a grin. Blake was no longer capable of keeping his cool. "Wait, she's your girlfriend? That doesn't make any sense." He turned to me. "Aren't you?" And, just then, another voice called out from not far away. "Blake, I've been looking for you. Come here." It was Ethan. He was wearing a sharply tailored suit, his features striking and severe. Compared to before, he'd changed quite a bit. Blake hesitated, gave me one last look, then walked away. Soon, the party was in full swing. I stayed by Lucas's side the entire time. Midway through, his phone rang. He stood up. "I'm going to take this call." I nodded. He hadn't been gone long when the seat beside me suddenly sank. Thinking Lucas had returned, I turned to speak to him, but it wasn't Lucas. It was Ethan. He'd been drinking a lot earlier, so he had come to this quieter side of the room to sit. And just my luck, the only available seat happened to be the one next to me. His presence made me uneasy. He sat there chatting and laughing with others, seemingly carefree. Watching him like this made me realize something. I hadn't seen Grace all evening. A birthday celebration and his fiancée wasn't here. That didn't seem right. I didn't know why, but Lucas still hadn't returned. Later, I found out Blake had pulled him away. By the end of the night, Lucas was thoroughly drunk. Ethan noticed and said to me, "I've prepared a room. Stay here tonight." I instinctively refused. "No, I'd rather just go home," he smirked, the edge of his mouth curling into something almost threatening. "Don't you like him a lot? I'm sure you wouldn't want him to find out about us." I was left speechless. I had no choice but to stay. This place, I'd been here countless times before. I even had my own room. A room Ethan had decorated specifically to my tastes. What I didn't expect was that, 2 years later, that room would remain exactly the same. It was as if someone had been maintaining it all this time. Ethan stood by the door and suddenly spoke. I wasn't lying about what I told you before. I stared at him, unsure of what he meant at first. Then it clicked. He was talking about what he'd told me, about Lucas having a marriage arrangement waiting for him. I asked, "So, you're still trying to convince me to leave him?" Under the bright lights, Ethan looked at me for a long time. His gaze was heavy, and he finally lowered his head, like he was compromising with himself. He asked, "Have you slept with him?" I pressed my lips together and didn't answer. Ethan took my silence as confirmation. After a moment of quiet, he said, "I can help you. I can handle his family and his fiancée. None of that is a problem." He said those words so casually, as if they were nothing more than idle remarks. But I knew better. It was never that simple. Back then, when Ethan wanted to marry me, it was already so difficult. And now, Lucas, the spoiled second-generation heir who relied on his family for everything. This was a whole different level of complication. And to think all I wanted at the start was just a little money. How did it come to this? I couldn't help but think Ethan really is a good man. Yet ironically, when I was at my most desperate, he wasn't there. "Lucas grew up under my watch. I can tell he's serious about you," Ethan said quietly, his tone measured but heavy. "And you?" He paused, taking a deep breath as if the next words were hard to say. "You like him too." I pressed my lips together, recalling all the changes I'd seen in Lucas these past few weeks. It hit me like a sudden wave. I had messed up big time. After saying that, Ethan pulled out his phone, placed it in front of me, and gestured for me to save my number. "If you ever need help, you can call me." I shook my head. No need. Ethan didn't argue. He just looked at me, a deep and piercing gaze that felt like it could see right through me. "Olivia," he called my name softly. "You've changed." A bitter smile tugged at his lips. "I guess you didn't love me as much as I thought you did." With that, he turned around and walked away without giving me a chance to respond. I stood frozen, watching his retreating back. A dull ache spread through my chest. When I finally closed the door behind me, the familiar arrangement of the room came into view, and in that moment, tears welled up uncontrollably. Yes, I had changed. I had shamelessly gotten involved with Lucas for money, thinking it would just be a fleeting romance. After all, I never thought he'd truly care. But now it was clear I was wrong. And to make matters worse, in Ethan's eyes, I had done all of this because I genuinely liked Lucas. The irony stung. They were both in eerily similar situations, both with fiancés waiting in the wings. Yet with Ethan, I had been so resolute, so unwilling to leave myself any way out. The next morning, I left early for work. There was no time to dwell on the mess I had created. Around midday, Lucas woke up and called me multiple times. I didn't answer. Instead, I sent him a single text message. "I'm sorry. I was only with you for the money. Let's break up. Time really does change people." I never thought there would come a day when I'd type out such a sentence. Admitting to being a gold digger. Admitting to my own disgrace. After sending the message, Lucas didn't reply. Instead, he drove straight to my place. He demanded answers. "Did someone tell you to say this?" "Who? Tell me," he asked, his voice sharp with frustration. I shook my head. "No one," but he didn't believe me. His expression darkened and he left without another word. Before walking out, he turned back briefly. "Wait for me?" I found out soon enough what he meant by that. That evening, Ethan appeared outside my apartment building. A cigarette dangled between his fingers, but he wasn't smoking. He just stood there quietly, watching me. Lucas went back to his family today and caused a huge scene. He's insisting on marrying you, Ethan said, his tone calm, but laced with something I couldn't quite place. You told him you wanted to break up. I nodded. There was no need to hide it. Yes. Ethan's brow furrowed, a flicker of disbelief crossing his face. For money, do you think I'd believe that crap? I met his gaze directly. It's true. I don't like him at all. Just like you said, I've changed. The person I am now is vain, materialistic, and greedy. Ethan pressed his lips together, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. Finally, after what felt like forever, he laughed, a low, self-mocking sound. He pointed to himself. Well, then look at me. I'm richer than him, aren't I? I offered you a check back then, and you didn't take it. How about this? I'll add another 0 to the amount. Come with me instead. What do you say? His words made my fingers tremble. As he spoke, he leaned forward slightly, his hand reaching out to touch my shoulder. His movements were tentative, almost careful, as if he were afraid I'd pull away. Olivia. Before anything else could happen, a voice called out from behind us. Ethan. It was Lucas, standing not far away, his face a mixture of disbelief and fury. You too? Ethan, ever composed, turned to face him calmly. Lucas, he said with eerie nonchalance. I forgot to tell you, she's my first love. Lucas's expression hardened, his gaze darting between Ethan and me, like he was trying to make sense of what he was seeing. After a long pause, he let out a bitter laugh. So that's why you wouldn't let me pay you back? Because the money was for her. Is that why you covered for her when she drank too much? Why you brought her to your birthday party? All because she's your first love. Everyone in their social circle knew about Ethan's infamous first love. It was a story that had been whispered about for years. And Lucas, he knew it all too well. Back then, he had just returned from studying abroad, spending his nights drinking and partying, indulging in the kind of reckless abandon only someone from his privileged background could afford. One night, he heard the shocking news. His cousin, his idol, had fallen for an ordinary girl. So much so that he was willing to give up his inheritance, even defying their family and threatening to strike out on his own. Lucas had scoffed at the time, flicking ash from his cigarette onto the bar floor. My cousin's lost his mind. He had thought, that'll never happen to me. I'm not the kind of person to fall for a girl like that. And yet here he was, standing in the aftermath of his own downfall. Not just any woman, the same woman. What kind of cruel joke is this? By the time I realized what was happening, Lucas had already charged forward and landed a punch squarely on Ethan's face. So what if she's your first love? She's my girlfriend now, Lucas spat. Ethan chuckled lightly, unfazed. Not anymore. And honestly, I thought about stepping aside for you too, but the problem is, she doesn't like you. Lucas was livid, practically jumping in place. You already have Grace. Even if Olivia doesn't end up with me, it's none of your business. The two went at it for a while, fists flying. I couldn't tell when Ethan had managed to call someone, but it wasn't long before a couple of guys showed up to drag Lucas away. Standing there, Ethan looked a bit ridiculous. A bruise was forming around his eye, and there was a gaping tear in his dress shirt. Of course, Lucas didn't fare much better, but none of us laughed. I simply stared at the ring on Ethan's finger, my voice calm and steady as I finally broke the silence. You're getting married soon, right? And it seems like things are going well between you two. Words like these, maybe you shouldn't say them anymore. Ethan furrowed his brows. No, I blinked, confused. What? I looked for you after you left, he said. I froze. But I understood. It would have been hard for him to find me. Back then, I moved constantly, cutting ties with everyone from my past. Ethan continued, Grace and I, it's fake. What I told you about giving it 2 years. I wasn't joking. Soon, I'll officially announce that our engagement is off. But Lucas said, I trailed off, recalling how Lucas had mentioned Grace several times since we reunited. According to him, their relationship seemed strong. Ethan smirked. If I can fool him, do you think my family would suspect anything different? I had no words. He pressed on. I'll admit it, I was jealous as hell when I saw you two together. I looked at the man in front of me, memories of countless nights we shared flooding my mind. Memories of that one night, too, when I saw him holding Grace in his arms. I had felt the same way then, jealous. Funny how life works. I lifted my gaze. Did you know? I called you that night. The night you were with Grace. Ethan's brows knit together, his expression unreadable. After a long pause, he finally spoke, his voice hesitant, almost awkward. I mistook her for you that night, but nothing happened between us. I sighed, but what's done is done. A broken relationship can't be pieced back together. I could play along with someone like Lucas, a playboy who treated life as a game, but I couldn't bring myself to gamble on Ethan again. He wanted to marry me. It wasn't going to be that easy. I could tell that he had built himself up now, gaining enough leverage to confidently say he'd even help Lucas be with me if that's what I wanted. But that also meant he had more to lose. He might be willing to sacrifice now, but would he feel the same way in the future if his feelings for me faded? Fairy tales about princes and Cinderellas were just that, fairy tales. Not long after, I heard that Lucas had been sent off to his family's branch office in River City. The night before he left, he stood outside my apartment all night. I didn't go to see him. Instead, I got a text from him. Wait for me. I'll have more money and power than him soon enough. Asterisk, I thought you really liked me. Guess not. But my feelings had burned out long ago. On the night I called Ethan, only to hear another woman's voice on the other end. The next day, I ran into Blake. He was out shopping with a date when I met him. I'd gone out to meet someone I'd connected with online to sell the luxury goods Lucas had bought me. Blake spotted me, said a few words to the woman at his side, and strolled over. I was in a good mood, watching the transaction go through on my phone screen. He clicked his tongue. The Ethan and Lucas families are practically at war over you, and here you are, living like none of it is your concern. I looked at him calmly. I've already made things clear to them. Blake raised an eyebrow. I guess I wasn't wrong back then. You really are one stubborn woman. Maybe, I replied. You know, Blake said, Ethan's had a rough couple of years since you left. After you two broke up, he went home and announced he wanted to cut ties with his family. His dad was so furious, he nearly beat him to death. Afterwards, his dad made him a bet. He told Ethan that if he could turn that company of his into an industry leader within 3 years, he'd grant him one wish. Ethan gritted his teeth and said he didn't need 3, just 2. And now, looks like he's almost there. He's working on a big project right now, one he seems really confident about. I hadn't known any of this. After Blake finished telling me, he left. Shortly after, my phone rang. The number was familiar. I answered. The other end was silent for a long time. Finally, I spoke. Even if you pull it off, it doesn't mean we can go back to what we had. Ethan chuckled, then asked me softly, Olivia, don't you think there's nothing in this world that's truly impossible? In the end, he was wrong. Ethan and Grace's engagement never got called off. His company had run into trouble with a project. It caused quite a stir. During that time, I would see Ethan's name trending on social media almost every day. He looked exhausted. Everyone thought this project was a surefire success. But at the last moment, things fell apart. Perhaps it was fate, or maybe, from the very beginning, The Jiang family had been playing him for a fool, and Ethan underestimated just how ruthless they could be. Life is full of moments when you're powerless to make your own choices. The Jiang family was all too happy to sit back and watch, hoping he'd fail and come crawling back to them. In the end, it was the Liu family that stepped in to save him. That evening, he came to find me. He stood outside my door, locking eyes with me for a long time. Eventually, I invited him in. Back when I had just returned to Baikeng, I didn't have much money, and the place I was staying in wasn't great. It was tiny, so small that the moment Ethan stepped inside, the space felt cramped. I could see the surprise in his eyes. After all, before everything happened, while my family wasn't exactly wealthy, we were never this down and out. After I left you, something happened to my family. Since I had already started, I didn't shy away from telling him about the hardships I'd faced over the past 2 years. Ethan's throat moved as he swallowed hard, regret flickering in his eyes. I didn't know. So, when he suddenly showed up outside my office building later, I wasn't all that surprised. Ethan, for a long time, he didn't say a word. The things he had come to say, he couldn't bring himself to say them anymore. I poured him a cup of tea. The tea leaves were cheap and bitter. When I first bought them, I had one sip and never touched them again. But Ethan drank it all. He drank slowly, and he didn't leave a single drop. After he finished, he finally spoke. I was too arrogant. Luckily, you left me back then. Otherwise, I would have broken my promise to you by now. I made you wait for 2 years for nothing. Back then, he was young and reckless, convinced that as long as he wanted something, he could make it happen. He thought all he needed was time. He didn't believe there was anything in this world that you couldn't achieve if you worked hard enough. But precisely because he'd been given so much, there were some things he couldn't truly hold on to. I looked at him. The light in the room reflected in his eyes, scattering into tiny, fragile fragments. He hesitated for a moment before saying, "Take better care of yourself. If I ever see you like this again, I'll never forgive myself." I nodded, "All right. I'm probably getting married soon. Don't come looking for me anymore." I nodded again. "All right." He left. It was several days later, while I was tidying up the sofa, that I found a check tucked into the cushions. It had an extra 0 compared to the one he gave me back then. Ah, Ethan, Ethan.